Hi guys, welcome back. Okay, let's carry on with the styling of this thing and try and get it looking a little bit more presentable. Let's remind ourselves of how far we've come. This is it so far, looking fairly basic, but of course it's really just markup. So the first thing we'll do is, let me grab my project, here it is. It actually begins styling the bar itself, which we called admin bar. So let's go down beneath our gravatar here and we'll start to add some rules for admin bar like so. Now we want to give it a minimum height of 50 pixels, which will then boost by giving it a padding at the bottom of 20, and that will give us our overall basic height of 70 pixels. We also want it to fill the width of our browser, so we'll give that 100% width. We're going to give it a solid background to begin with. We actually want to apply a slightly transparent background, but we'll begin with the solid background, and that's for the benefit of IE, for example, and then it won't read this next GBA value, so it will ignore that. We'll just make this black with an alpha value of 0.8, so that will be slightly transparent, and you'll then be able to see the web page content whizzing up and down underneath it. This is important. Crucially, the position is going to be fixed, and it's going to be fixed in the top left of our screen at all times, irrespective of where the scroll bars go. There we go. And I'm just going to copy and paste a couple of font styles here just to save you watching me type everything, because you'll fall asleep. There we go. We're going to use the Arial font family. Font size of 14, which is nice and visible, nice and legible. Give it a color of white with a line height of 28 pixels, because that's going to be the height of our buttons and controls. So that will then vertically align, vertically center all our text and make it quite nice and neat. We're also going to add a box shadow underneath our admin bar, just to highlight the fact that it's sitting above our web page, give it a little bit of dimension. You can see we've made it 2 pixels in distance with an RGBA value there of black and 0.6 transparency. Okay, let's save that, and if I bring back the browser, I'll reset that and see what that's done. Okay, well, that's looking fairly basic still, but you can see what it has done is given us our background a basic text color, and of course the content has actually stretched that beyond 70 pixels, so we could do with floating everything in a nice horizontal line. Firstly, we'll just neaten up these anchors, so we give ourselves some default anchor styling. I'll just grab that and paste it in if I can quickly find it in my reference CSS here. Here we go. So I'll stick this below. Again, note that all my rules are going to be prepended by admin bar to make sure that that's all we're affecting. Okay, now what we could do with doing now, if I just reset that, that's nice and basic, is altering our welcome admin text. According to our design, that was a droid serif typeface, which we're going to need to grab from Google Web Fonts or an alternative source, but we're going to use Google Web Fonts. This is it, looks very pretty, so let's go and grab the link to the CSS, and we can, let's firstly select italic, that's what we're after, and we'll grab this CSS link, copy, and paste that into the head of our page above our existing CSS style sheet. There we go. So I'll save that. That's now going to allow us to use that typeface within our existing CSS. So I'm going to grab a couple of rules here just to quickly demonstrate how that's done. and I'll put those right at the bottom. So this is our welcome LI element, our list item, within admin bar, and I've just applied that droid serif font family there and given it a font style of italic. The anchor within that I want to reset to Arial and normal and give it a little padding on the left to just give a little bit of space between it and the welcome note. So if I refresh that, you'll see that that's what we've done there. Okay, now one big difference to make visually would be to get everything lined up along the top of the thing, so that's what we'll do next. So we'll start with some button styling, like so. We'll stick that all under here. The first thing we'll do is we're going to target our list items, all of them, and we're going to display them, display inline. While we're here, I'm going to give that a position of relative. We're going to need to do that in order to do our menu for later, which will be positioning absolutely within those list items. I'll just leave that like that. For menu. Okay, that's already going to have made a big difference. So I'll just reset the page already. And you can see that within each of those UL elements, it's displayed the list items in line. Perfectly good to start with. Now we need to float our ULs to the left in order to get them all going. So we'll add another batch of styles here, purely for the UL, and we want to float that to the left. And I'm also going to apply a margin. I want to put 20 pixels on the top to shunt everything downwards, and also to the left of each unordered list, which is going to give some spacing between the lists themselves. There we go. Now one thing will improve that, and that's by floating these list items as well, and then that just takes care of everything and makes sure that everything's lining up perfectly in a line. There we go. Okay, that's a good start. The crucial difference between these and our PSD is that our buttons within our controls have got borders and some additional styling, so now we can have a look at that. So we're going to add some styling to our controls anchors, and we'll kick off by displaying them as inline block, which is going to allow us to treat them as inline elements, but we'll be able to determine the dimensions of them and play around with padding and that sort of thing. So now we've done that, we'll actually add some padding. Nothing on the top, because we're going to determine the height manually, but we are going to add 10 pixels of padding on either side. We'll give it a height of 28 pixels, which coincides with the line height that we determined earlier, if you remember, and we'll give it a minimum width of 10 pixels, so that added to the padding will give us a minimum width of 30 pixels to make it nice and square, because our icons could be much thinner, of course. Now we're going to give it a border. That's fairly crucial. 1 pixel of width, solid border, and we'll give that a color of that, which I happen to have just pulled from the PSD, take my word for it. Next we want a bit of a background, which we're going to set at this, also take it from the PSD. We're going to align the text centrally, and last but not least we'll put position at relative, which is for the benefit of that little notification icony yellowy bit thing, if you remember. Okay, let's save that and we'll refresh our page again. So there you go, that's looking a lot more convincing already. one problem you'll instantly see is that we have a double border between our buttons where they meet. That's quite logical, and that's easily taken care of. What we'll do is give it a border right width of 0 pixels. So that retains the color and the style, but it just removes the width of that border, which is done like that. So that looks a lot neater between them. The only obvious problem there being that the last child of each list is missing its border on the right. So let's now start targeting the last child, and if we refer back to our image, while we're here we may as well add these rounded corners to that last child, and also we'll need to add those rounded corners to our first child elements, so we may as well sort that all out now. So I'm just going to grab those and paste them in, just for the sake of speed and entertainment. You can see what I've done here. We have the first child of our list element here within our controls, and that has a border radius on the top right and the bottom right, and the same applies, sorry, top left and the bottom left, and the same applies to our last child element, which has top right and bottom right border radius, and we've just added that border right width of 1 pixel just to return that into the game there. So let's refresh that, and you can see that that's neatly taken care of that. The first child there has its border radius, the last child has its border radius. The only problem now is that where we have a single element floating around in a list, it's treated as a last child, and therefore not also a first child. So it's missing these border radiuses on the left side. So the only way to tackle that is to use the seldom seen, but perfectly applicable in this case, only child pseudo selector, and we will give that a border radius of 3 pixels on all corners. Save that, refresh it once more, and you'll see that in the case where we have an only child, it's perfectly rounded on all corners. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is sort out a hover state. So we'll get rid of that, and we'll start looking at that. Hover state, according to our PSD, was a lighter border. Our text is already sorted, and we had a box shadow underneath that. So let's grab that. Let's have a look here. Just going to copy and paste again. There we are. Here it is, and this deals with our hover state for our anchors there. All it's doing is adding the border of 1 pixel solid with a lighter color, and we have this box shadow falling underneath by 2 pixels. So if we save that, have a look and see what that's done, and you can see that that looks perfectly in line with what we dictated in our PSD. The only problem you can see is that by hovering over items which we previously removed the right border from, it's then added them back, and that's then just butting everything over to the right, so that looks a little bit clumsy. So we now need to just get rid of that, or just counter that by removing a pixel of padding on the right hand side. Simple as that. And you'll see that that's now keeping everything okay, except for the last child elements, which of course already had their border in place. They're now shunting in everything else into the left because we're removing that pixel, so we're now going to have to just deal with that. So that is our final rule there, where we finally counter the last child hover and give it back its proper 10 pixels of padding. One last refresh, and you'll see that our buttons are perfectly dealt with in all states. So that's actually looking pretty neat, and you'll see that because we're floating our ULs, everything jumps down in groups if the browser gets too narrow. Okay, that's looking pretty good. One notable detail which is missing is the fact that these characters aren't yet displayed as icons. You'll need to get yourself back to the Just Be Nice Studio and grab their web symbols typeface. Previously in the other tutorial when we were dealing with Photoshop, we grabbed the OTF download for it, but now you need to go and grab the font pack, which has all been nicely wrapped up by fontsquirrel.com. Download that and plug that into your fonts folder. I've already done so I'm going to grab those here and plop those into there, like so. So we have our fonts. Now we need to reference them in our CSS with the font face rule in order to be able to actually use them. So I'll copy and paste that for you here, and we'll put this in directly underneath our reset rules. So this is it. Each of these points to the various format files, and up here we've assigned our font family the name of web symbols regular. That can be whatever you like, but that just happens to be the name of it, so we'll keep that. These paths pointing to these fonts are of course relative to this CSS file. Okay, having done that, now all that remains to be done is to add another rule, which is fairly simple. I'll put that in amongst our anchor styling here at the top above our buttons. That just assigns the font family web symbol regular to any anchor within a list with a class of icon. So we'll save that, go back to our demo and refresh. Simple as that. There we go. That looks fantastic. And of course the benefit of using these instead of bitmap images is that they are perfectly scalable. These things look great. Okay, that's all we've got to do for now. If I just check the itinerary here, I can see that I was supposed to pull in this background as well. That's just one more detail which I wanted to do. Get yourself to subtlepatterns.com and grab some kind of random image as a background. This is what we're going to use as our web page underneath. You can download it as a PNG and pull it into your project. That's the only image you're going to need to put in your image folder. So I'm just going to do so now. There we go. And now we need to just add a little bit of styling to our body, which if you'll recall we had given a class of logged in order to shunt it down with a bit of padding. So if I paste that in here at the top, you can see I've given that some padding. I've given it a minimum height of 1000 pixels, which will force some scroll bars into view for the sake of the demonstration, and it has a background of our little whitey PNG there. Command and S, save that. One last refresh of the page, and there it is. Perfect. Okay, that's good for the time being. In the next video we will tackle these little yellow elements here, and then of course we've got things like the menu, the tooltip and the search bar to deal with later on as well. So for the time being, once again, probably time for a coffee or something, and thanks for watching.